What's going on, Jeromes? Beautiful Tuesday. Wolves won, birds are chirping and ish, and it's time for 5 good Vikings questions submitted on our community tab. Thank you for that. First one is Kansas State, near and dear to my heart. Bailey Stone, how would you feel if we re-signed Dalton Risner and played him at center and drafted Cooper Beebe in the second round? I would actually be down to clown for that. I feel like Risner has played center before, but it was all the way back in the day. His true freshman season at Kansas State, I think it was 2016. Somewhere there, but he does have experience. He has talked about when Risner was a free agent, he was talking about his versatility. So when he was just out there floating, he said, "I'll play guard, I'll play center, I'll do whatever." And if the Vikings do want to have a rebirth on the interior offensive line, I mean, Bradbury isn't going to cut it. I think I'm at that point where he had a nice little blip when Chris Cooper came in, but Risner would have a little bit better of an anchor. He does have that leadership ability. I think that he would be fine at center. And Cooper Beebe is just a dog, man. Like I've loved Cooper Beebe for the last couple of years. He is a mauler. He is a road grader. You're probably going to be in that day 2 range for the Vikings, but if they want to get back to building a bully up front, sliding Risner over, even though Risner is not a 330-pound center, but he still has some stoutness as well as some agility, and Cooper Beebe would just be a dog. I would love it, man. I'd be down with that. Next up, Kanye West's biggest fan. If we get gotta love autocorrect, Hershey Walker. It's really sweet. A Herschel Walker deal for JJ. I'm not saying do it, but at least consider it, right? So it would be hard to translate the Herschel Walker deal into modern terms, because a lot of it was contingent of, hey, you can have this player, but if I cut him, then I get this draft pick. So I think teams are safeguarded where they're like, yeah, we're not going to do that, because basically Jimmy Johnson swindled Vikings GM Mike Lynn, where the Vikings trade a bunch of players that Dallas had no intention of keeping, and then it turned into a draft pick bonanza for Dallas. But let's just say 3 ones and change for Justin Jefferson. I think that's where it would start and end, and I'm not saying that I would be down to clown with that, because Jefferson is an absolute premium player. And I know what you're saying. It's like, oh, well, the Chiefs traded Tyreek Hill, and then they won 2 straight Super Bowls. The two situations are not analogous at all. I mean, with the Chiefs, you already had the best quarterback in the league, perhaps eventually the best quarterback of all time. So it's a completely different situation. But in terms of a JJ trade, like, it would have to include a premium pick this year as well as future first-round picks. So if New England is not enamored with any of the top 3 quarterbacks, actually, it might even take more than that. But if New England, basically, it would have to require the Vikings landing their quarterback of the future and also other premium draft picks for me to part ways with Justin Jefferson at this point. So basically, it would take. So New England, say they're not enamored with whoever's going to be left over of the top 3 quarterbacks. Now, they could just stick and pick and take Marvin Harrison Jr., have him on his rookie deal, but that you're hoping that Harrison Jr. develops into 80% of the player that that Justin Jefferson is. So betting on the sure thing, the Patriots do have the cap space to be able to go do that. So who knows? Like, that's where it would start and end. So it would take the number 3 overall pick, 2 future first rounders, and also some change to go from there. So we'll see. Next up, disposable hero. If Daniil leaves and we get nothing, is that Kwesi's biggest failure so far? And does that get him on the hot seat? Now, this is one of my favorite edits. This is when Daniil was having his hold-in, but before he got his revised deal. So part of the revised deal is Daniil got up to $20 million in compensation. He hit that with all of the sack incentives, which was great this year, as career best season. But also part of the restructure and the renegotiation was that they would the Vikings not be able to franchise tag him. So the Vikings can't tag and trade him. They can't just straight up franchise tag him either. So Daniil could potentially leave for nothing, and I think that he is going to leave. I think that the Vikings want to keep him, Except I don't think that the Vikings will offer him top end of the market money, $25, $26 million per season. I do think a team like the Bears, I do think a team like the Lions, I do think a team like the Jaguars, who do have the cap space to be able to go get it. And also, I mean, the Lions and the Bears, like, they know the caliber of player that Daniil is from playing him twice a year. Plus, it's the whole it's a force multiplier, because not only are you adding a premium player, but you taking him away from a division rival. So I think that's where we're at. And it's the same thing with Kirk, where Kirk and his restructured deal, with the void years, you can't franchise tag him. And also, frankly, because of the Washington deal, you can't franchise tag him anyway. But the fact that the Vikings didn't trade Kirk or Daniil when they could, whether last offseason or at the deadline, even though the Vikings were fighting for their playoff lives, in retrospect, and also Kirk was hurt before the deadline, in retrospect, having them both leave for nothing other than 2025 comp pick considerations, that's a bad look. That's a really bad error, man. Next up, Nathan Perzels. Sure. If and when Kirk hits free agency, how long will it take for him to sign with the team? I think that it'll get done quick, because I think that. So I do believe that even though legal tampering hasn't opened, please come on. I think that Kirk and his agent and the teams, I think they have a ballpark idea of where each other are going to be at, and I think that things will get done pretty quick, because I think Kirk wants this thing to be done quickly, and also. I think Kirk is a mercenary, but also I think that he's respectful to the process, and he wants to be able to sign up with his new team, get in there as quickly as possible, and also, if he leaves the Vikings, potentially having them set up their offseason strategy as quick as possible as well, whether it's signing a quarterback. Because think about, if the Vikings are looking to sign a bridge quarterback in free agency, whether it's Darnold, whether it's Russell Wilson, whether it's Jabroni Brisket, whoever, the chances of them bringing them one of those players in and then going after their quarterback in the future in the draft, chances of bringing one of them in go down precipitously the longer that Kirk Cousins stretches out his free agency, because they're potentially waiting on him to come back. So and Kirk will be respectful of the process. Also, I don't think that the longer that it goes on, I don't think that Kirk will get more money out of it. So that's important to him. So I think teams will approach him with their best offer, and I think they'll compare it to what the Vikings have on the table, and I think they'll go from there. I do think it'll go relatively quickly. And hell, it might be a spot that through legal tampering, they look at the offers from some of the other teams. Maybe it's not up to snuff, and maybe Kirk does resign with the Vikings before open free agency starts. It's possible. Robert Harry. The Vikings, with a few notable exceptions, have not drafted well for a long time. How much of this do you think is due to poor scouting versus poor decisions by the front office? So it's always a chicken or the egg situation. Do you blame the scouting for not putting the best players in front of the GM? Do you blame the GM for not picking the best players, or potentially going against the scouting? Or also, people don't factor this in enough. Do you blame the coaching? Because you could have a great player who would have thrived in 31 of 32 teams, but if he lands on that 32nd team where the coaching staff doesn't have the time of day, they aren't good at developing players. I mean, so if you bring in a player and the coaching staff doesn't play him or develop him, the GM gets blamed. I always thought that was kind of weird, because it does take two to tango in that spot. And with the Vikings, since Spielman came in 2006, I mean, they certainly have had some hits, except you've had a couple years, but you haven't had that consistent day 2, day 3 area hit rate. Where you find these contributors. And you look at the Chiefs, you look at the Niners, I mean, that's where they've made their bread and butter. They're finding guys in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round that can come in, compete, and start, and can contribute. So 2010 4th rounder Jefferson. Then you look at 2011, not so much. 2012, later rounds. Harrison, yes, but I mean, later rounds, Jarius Wright was good for a second. Rhett Ellison, decent blocking. Tight end, Blair Walsh. Yeah. Hodges, Jeff Lund, Balcom, Audi, no. Yeah, so I think that's what sets the other teams apart, where and that goes into like deep scouting. where you're going to have a chance at some of these lotto tickets later on, but the Vikings just haven't really been hitting on them. Stephon Diggs, 5th round, that's big. Daniil in the third round, that's also huge. 2016, you don't talk about 2016. 2017, I mean, Fadi contributed for a while, which is great value out of a 7th rounder. But, I mean, Jaleel Johnson, Ben Gedeon, I mean, teams like the Niners and the Chiefs are getting significant contributors out of these picks, and the Vikings simply have not been as of late. Oh, Daniel Carlson's an All-Pro. Gronklin was good for a 5th rounder. Chris Boyd, a backup corner and special teamer for a 7th, is good. Marcus Epps has been a starter around the league, just not here. So again, that comes down to the development question. Drew Samia, oh boy. Let's see, Brandel. Metellus 6 is good. KJ in the 5th was pretty solid as well. And then let's see, ISM, Davidson, Beasley. Yeah, Beasley in the 4th. It's pretty solid. Yeah. But I mean, you go through this all damn day long. But basically, what it comes down to is that it's a little bit of everything. It's a little bit of scouting. It's a little bit of the GM making the ultimate selection. It's a little bit on the coaching staff as well. All right. So things need to be improved in all phases. Lastly, David Hill, how much in the Venmo for you to burn that Auburn hoodie? So I don't even know where we got this, but it's a Zubaz, but War Damn Eagle. Now, college rivalries are great, and the thing I love most is that I'm not tied to a specific team, so I can just sort of cheer for everyone or whoever I have my jelly beans on. So War Damn Eagle, or we could do this. I feel like if we posted a photo of this in the great state of Alabama, I feel like this would be blasphemy. I feel like I would not be allowed in the state. Who knows? But I will say this. Again, since I don't have loyalty to a single program, $69.99 in the Venmo, and we will burn this thing, and we'll make a video out of it. Although, I feel like with some of the materials that are in things nowadays, I feel like this might burn down my house. And even if we're starting the thing outside, it's weird, man. But that's it. Also, baby smooth, baby. That's it. That's Q&A for this beautiful Tuesday. You guys are the best. Skull production value.